I just mean during the day. Daylight. When was the last time you remember seeing it? And I'm not talking about some distant, half forgotten childhood memory. I mean, like yesterday, last week. Can you come up with a single memory? You can't, can you? You know something? I don't think the sun even exists in this place because I've been up for hours and hours and hours, and the night never ends here. Good evening, everyone. This is Stone Gasman live from New York City. And tonight we are going to be watching the theatrical edition, and yes, I will explain, the theatrical edition of Dark City, directed by Alex Proyas and written by Alex Proyas, Lem Dobbs, and David S. Goyer, and starring Rufus, Sewell, Kiefer Sutherland, Jennifer Connelly, Richard O'Brien, Ian Richardson, and William Hurt. So I'm very happy that you all came out to join me tonight. And tonight, I also like to welcome a very, very special guest. We've known each other for years on Region Free podcasting and everything. Please welcome Flash Wound Dan of fleshwoundfeatures.com. I said Flash. I should say Flesh. Sorry.
Okay.
Flesh Wound Dan is the man.
That works.
Well, how do you feel about Dark City, especially 25 years later, before we get started?
Very eager to talk about this one because I did see it in the theater, and at least theatrically, there was nobody that was really talking about it. Definitely one of those films that found its audience later. And honestly, one of my favorite all-time movies. I'm a huge fan of this one. I really am. And I'll get into that. I won't get ahead of myself, but
right,
I have a lot of interesting bits and pieces about the movie, and could have looked different at one point, very different at one point. So I'm eager to talk about this one because it has found that audience, but I still feel like you're right at that period where. Not too long, we had Matrix, we had 13th Floor was another one. A lot of these similar themes, but I do believe this is the best of its era.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. As I told Dan right before we went live to the audience out there, the truth is I saw this not in the theater, but I saw it months later when it hit DVD in 1998. And as you can see behind me is the poster for Dangerous Beauty. And I saw it mainly because of Rufus Sewell, who was, of course, in Dangerous Beauty. But, of course, I was also a fan of Jennifer Connelly and William Hurt, and we'll talk about them in detail as well. And I fell in love with it the first time I saw it, especially discovering it was from the director of The Crow, which, of course, became a sleeper hit in 1994. And then I didn't see it again for 10 years. I bought the DVD because I didn't have Blu-ray at the time when it came out in 2008. And I had a difficult time navigating through all the bonus material, which is what I was most looking forward to. And even on the Blu-ray, revisiting it, it tends to be a bit frustrating, toggling between all these commentaries. There's 5 of them. I mean, that's a lot. And there's like an hour and a half documentary sort of split into like 3 or 4 different parts and everything. But and if anything, and I know Dan agrees with me that, this film needs an upgrade to 4K, not just for the DVD navigation, but of course for many, many, many reasons. I mean, this film has its massive audience, and I think that they deserve it. But before we press play, let me just say the reason why we're doing the theatrical cut instead of the director's cut is, honestly, I have more experience with the theatrical cut, and I'm kind of used to it, even though, and I'm glad Dan is here because hopefully he'll go into detail about the differences, because there's like an 11-minute difference between the two cuts. Largely centered around the Kiefer Sutherland character, from what I understand. So we'll go into that and stick around through the end credits, because I will be talking about who this movie is dedicated to, and his very tragic story. So at any rate, I am paused on the New Line Cinema logo. Let me just bring my device back to it just real quick.
Okay, I'll get set up there.
Yeah. And okay.
All right.
Paused on the New Line logo. If everybody's ready, we'll start on the count of 3.
Okay.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, and play.
All right. Here
Dark
we go.
City, the theatrical cut. Yeah,
Yes.
This is the version that I first saw, and it's sort of become, in my memory. I'm going to watch more of the director's cut eventually, but here we have this opening narration with Kiefer Sutherland.
Yes.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, yeah, not to cut you off. This is the biggest difference in the director's cut.
Yes.
This opening narration is not in the director's cut. They were now it's a shame because there is some conflicting feelings, because I do think it's a lot of Kiefer Sutherland does a really good job in this opening narration, but it spells it all out. It's very on the nose. And not producers, but the studio at different points in the script process said, like, you got to dumb this down. So unfortunately, well, like I said, I still like this. When I first saw the director's cut, I was like, I kind of miss it. I know why they cut it, because it's not really necessary to have this big exposition dump. But yeah, I get it. I get kind of missing it too. That's the version you saw in theaters, and very much so. It's also with Dr. Schreiber a little bit more on the nose. His character was kind of described as a Jew that collaborated with the Nazis, is essentially,
right.
And this, like I said, conflicted, but I would have kept it to the director's cut as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's like, this is one of those films where the studio was very unsure, like, well, is the audience going to get it? And I think they underestimate audiences' intelligence more often than not. And this is a clear-cut example of that. With Kiefer Sutherland's character, I mean, he kind of reminds me of like Igor from like Frankenstein, where he has this, this limp and he's like, walk this way, let's follow him into this story. And very noirish, right off the
absolutely.
bat. I mean, I love the noir elements of this movie. Yeah. New Line Cinema presents.
I think I've always really loved that. Film noir and science fiction are two things that go together. And, some people consider this more of a fantasy. There's a lot, and I'll go into that more as well. Even the people that made it have different takes on it, which is good. But I've always appreciated that ever since, well, Blade Runner, of course. I would also say Alphaville, the 1965 Jean-Luc Godard film, which kind of started sci-fi noir. They just go together perfectly. They really do blend well. Some of my favorite films: Dark City, Blade Runner. So Rufus Sewell, I've always really liked him, and of course, at this point, he's still somewhat of an unknown. It's not his first film, but at different points, there were several actors attached to this. Johnny Depp was somebody that was in the running at one point.
He was the first pick, yeah.
Johnny Depp. They had also Ray Fiennes at one point, and the reason that he didn't do it was Strange Days.
Catherine Bigelow's picture, yeah.
It bombed, and they just, at this particular point when they were getting ready for casting, they didn't think he had much juice left in his career. Of course, that was wrong. But Liam Neeson was also somebody in the running. But I think they're correct when they say it's better not to have a star for this role. It's a guy who doesn't know who he is, so kind of better if the audience doesn't have a view of who he is either.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, not to say those other guys, it wouldn't have still maybe been a great film, but I honestly, I think it worked out in the film's favor to have Rufus do it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, when I saw this movie again 25 years later, I mean, these images just blasted through my brain again. Oh my God, the Shell Beach stuff. I had completely forgotten.
Yeah.
Wow. And Rufus is awesome. I mean, more stuff than not. I mean, I loved him in especially Dangerous Beauty and Dark City. I will say though, one disappointment. He wasn't bad in it, but the sequel to The Mask of Zorro, he was
Oh yeah.
cast as the villain, and that
Yeah.
movie was just a massive disappointment because the sexual chemistry between Antonio and Catherine Zeta-Jones wasn't there anymore. And like I said, it wasn't Rufus's fault. It was just the script and the execution. But I'll watch him in everything.
Yeah, he's the name's escaping me at the moment, but he's in an alternate history sci-fi show on Amazon where the Nazis basically had won World War II and looked pretty good. I've never gotten to it, but hey, Lorne.
Lorne, my man. Yes, Dark City is too smart a film for any easily identifiable demographic. Oh, that is so true. That is so true.
Yeah. I almost hate to even compare it to Matrix or 13th Floor.
Right. Right.
They're very different films, but I think unfortunately at that time it's like, oh yeah, the one like the Matrix.
Yep. And the powerful use of clocks throughout the movie. I mean, it's actually called a mystery clock production. Mm-hmm. And it sort of reminds me of, even though it's a completely different type of film and different genre, like High Noon from 1952, where, it all depended upon that final gunfight you see the clock slowly ticking away towards doom. And, even though we reset the clock or we just keep going through a nighttime setting here, it's still very much the same idea. And here as the lead stranger is Richard O'Brien. I am unashamedly, I'm not ashamed to say I am a Rocky Horror Picture Show fan. Mm-hmm. I've seen it twice in the theater, at midnight showings. And can I just say real quick about Richard O'Brien, because I think he's awesome in this movie. He's so intimidating. And the little kid. But I saw Rocky Horror at a midnight showing in Chicago. And they ask anybody who's never been there before if you're a virgin to go up on stage. So I ended up going on stage and ended up being castrated by Magenta. But then I go to Australia and I thought, you know what? Let's try this again. Maybe that was just a joke or whatever the case may be. And like, I'm not kidding, but I went to a showing in Australia, and immediately, the cast recognized I was American when I said I was a virgin, and I went up on stage, and I ended up getting oral sex. I was not expecting that.
Good bargain for the ticket price.
So if you want to, depending upon which Rocky Horror midnight experience you want, maybe Australia would be the better one.
Not Jennifer Connelly's voice in that scene, but very beautiful anyways. She's
stunningly beautiful. What's amazing about Jennifer Connelly is that her first three films, Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America, Dario Argento's Phenomena, aka Creepers, and then the movie I discovered her in, which was Labyrinth. And I've been a fan of Jennifer Connelly ever since. Those three movies, that is a hell of a track record to launch your career. That is a hell of a track record.
It's funny when Kiefer Sutherland was cast for this. The role was written for a much older man, which you forget at this time. Kiefer wasn't very old, and Jennifer's, God, she looks so young here. But
oh yeah,
when he was having dinner and meeting with Alex Proyas about this film, he said, "I think you cast the wrong Sutherland for this one." Which I think he was doing himself a disservice, because I think he's a very underrated actor. I think with
I agree.
24, he kind of fell into a certain mold, but I think he's actually a really good character actor who often isn't remembered, I think, for his best stuff. I mean, Lost Boys is fine, but he's done some really awesome work.
Lauren says, I have both Rocky Horror and Shock Treatment. Its superior sequel, Don't Kill Me, memorized. Together with Phantom of the Paradise, these are DNA films for me. Yeah, I mean, I got to see Shock Treatment. I still have to see Shock Treatment, I have to admit.
You definitely do. I hear more and more people that prefer it.
That's one film I think I need to ignore the critics on and just, keep going from there. But
and I know this is one I've never talked to Lauren about, but I can see him being a big fan. I mean, the German expressionist films, the influence is just all over here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Fritz Lang, very Metropolis. I mean, Roger Ebert was so in love with this movie. He named it the best film of 1998, period. He said this was the best film of the year. And he actively participated in the Blu-ray features. He does a commentary track. He even introduces the director and the screenwriters and the cast. That's how much he loved this movie. And he used it in his, teaching workshops and everything. But let me just say also about Kiefer Sutherland real quick is that a lot of people love him in Lost Boys. I'm not a big fan of that movie. I respect the audience. I'm just not a fan.
Yeah, it's not his best work.
Yes, I discovered him in the movie that he did right after that with Michael J. Fox called Bright Lights, Big City, where he played this drug dealer. And, Michael J. Fox's life is being, ruined by drugs and everything. And then he meets a girl played by his future wife, and it kind of inspires him to get healthy again. But, Kiefer Sutherland blew me away in that movie. And so, I thought, well, he does have some of his father in him.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he's somebody that can do anything, and doesn't often get to show that. But
now, do you recognize this actress at all?
Melissa George?
Melissa George. Yeah. She had only been in like an Australian soap opera, I think, at this time. But, this was her film debut. And she later on went on to do films like the Amityville Horror remake as, the matriarch of the Lutz family. And she also did 30 Days of Night. Now, that is a vampire movie I actually liked.
Oh, and 30 Days of Night's great. She was kind of an it girl for a little bit. She was popping up in all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. I've seen some of her indie stuff, too. I really like her. But I've forgotten this was completely her film debut. Now, I wonder if this type of thing ever existed with the little food trays inside where you put some coins in. I mean, I would be worried about how bad the food would be after a few hours, though.
Well, everything is kind of an approximation. They don't. Really, if you look at some of the sets here, there's some shots, like I said in this, that I notice new things each time. They don't need to be super detailed. They're just painting a basic scene. The strangers trying to, in fact, I could be wrong, and I don't know if I'm creating this in my head. Like I think there might be a shot of like a library, but you could tell like it was just a few books and little stuff like that. William Hurt's also fantastic actor.
Yes,
always loved him since Altered States.
That was his first film. Yeah,
notoriously difficult actor to work with. From what
Can I just say about William Hurt, because I grew up watching William Hurt's movies, and it's very disparaging when later on, particularly after death, that you hear that he wasn't really all that nice of a guy. Look, I've seen Altered States. I liked him in that. And then, Eyewitness with Sigourney Weaver. The Big Chill, directed by Lawrence Kasdan, tried to, broke him out, essentially. And then he won an Oscar in 1985 for Kiss of the Spider Woman, which I saw once, liked him in it, haven't returned to it.
Late Raul Julia.
Yes, with Raul Julia. Yeah, rest in peace, Raul Julia. And right after that, he made the movie that I've seen the most times, which was Children of a Lesser God. I did a commentary on it a year or so ago, right after he died. I mean, this wasn't really planned, and the thing is that with Children of a Lesser God, it's impossible to talk about that without going into detail about the abuse that Marlee Matlin suffered at William Hurt after she won the Oscar for Best Actress for that movie. And look, anybody that wants to go listen to the commentary, please go ahead, because I really go into my mixed feelings about William Hurt. But the thing is that because there is no abuse on screen in the film, I can watch them as their characters and not be reminded of that. But I have Marlee Matlin's book, and what William did to her was horrible. And the thing is that, of course, nowadays I think he's most recognizable from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was in the Incredible Hulk, and I think he was in even in Infinity War, I believe. And then he died like a year and a half ago. But look, I mean, the truth of the matter is, I mean, there's still a lot of movies I'll watch William Hurt in. I mean, definitely a great actor, but yeah, very difficult to work with, and very much an abuser. And, it's just one of those things that you have to come to grips with. I mean, when you admire an actor so much. And but luckily, he's the only one in the cast that has that reputation. So,
well, definitely brilliant. You can't take that away from
him. Exactly. I mean, well, see, it's funny. The same year that he did Dark City, he also the same year he did Dark City, he also did a movie which I feel like I'm the only one on the planet that saw, called One True Thing, with Meryl Streep. She got her like 74th Oscar nomination for that. And she plays a woman dying of cancer. And we discover that William Hurt, her husband, had been, a professor who had been cheating on her, sleeping with college students. And William Hurt is very good at it. But it's just, when you're reminded of these things, like, oh my God. But look, I mean, I can still watch his films. Great actor, but asterisk. Yeah.
Also, pretty ironic with this one. One of the writers, whose name's escaping me at the moment,
Lem Dobbs.
David
S. Goyer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, because it's a lot of Kafka-esque elements in here. And 1991, he wrote the not terribly well regarded Steven Soderbergh film Kafka with Jeremy Irons in the Kafka role, which wasn't an adaptation of one specific story, but interesting little film I've wanted to revisit for a while.
Dan mentioned German Expressionism. Fairuza Balk would be great in a German Expressionist film because she looks exactly like Conrad Veidt in The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Ooh, yes. And welcome to the commentary, Cliff. Always great to see you. And Lauren said, Melissa George. Melissa George has a scene-stealing moment in Mulholland Drive. And that's saying something in that film.
No, she's very good. I mean, she's had a good career, so not taking anything away from it, but I do feel like she should be, maybe more of a name than she became.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Jennifer Connelly, of course, won an Oscar after she did Dark City for A Beautiful Mind. Wonderful, beautiful performance. Needless to say, pun intended.
She was having a good run around this time too. Couple years or a year or two away from Requiem for a Dream. And
yes, oh my God. But sadly, I think my favorite image of her will always be on the horse in Career Opportunities. Mm-hmm. I'm almost ashamed to say that. I mean, I am such a Jennifer Connelly fan, but when I rewatch Career Opportunities, I realized, okay, as a comedy, this doesn't work. As a fantasy, it works in spades. Now, oh God, this production design. We'll talk about the production
I should also
design.
point out, just absolutely gorgeous. You pointed out Richard O'Brien, of course. Also, one of the taller guys right there in the background behind the child. Is Bruce Spence, who is a very well-known, you may not know the name, but very well-known character actor out of Australia. He has been in so many things and always kills it when he gets a more meaty role. That one actor there is actually a woman who is dubbed by a man.
Oh. And here we have the legendary Ian Richardson.
Yes, rest in
Yeah,
peace.
very, very well respected British actor who I had to go through his resume again. He portrayed Machiavellian Tory politician Francis Urquhart in the BBC's House of Cards television trilogy, and he was also a leading Shakespearean stage actor. But the other films that he's been in, see, I mean, in the 60s, he was in movies like As You Like It, Comedy of Errors, Marat Sade, A Midsummer Night's Dream. One musical role on film, The Priest in Man of La Mancha from 1972, which I will not be doing a 50th anniversary commentary on. And in the 80s, he became well known as Major Newheim in the award-winning Private Schultz and Sir Goodbar Evans in Channel 4's adaptation of Porterhouse Blue. And he also appeared in commercials for Grey Poupon Dijon mustard in the United States in his role as Prime Minister Francis Urquhart, opposite Paul Eddington as Prime Minister Jim Hacker. Pardon me, do you have any Grey Poupon? I'll never forget those commercials. I can't stand commercials too, but I got to admit that was a funny gimmick.
Yeah, surprised they never brought that one back. This whole sequence is pretty cool. Full in his clothes, but
yeah,
strangers don't like moisture.
Well, this entire movie was filmed on sets.
Yeah,
very little CG, only for a few extensions, which is what the purpose of it was in originally. But now, of course, people depend on it too much and CGI.
This movie would not at all have this same aesthetic now.
Oh, not nearly. Yeah, not nearly.
It would lose a lot. I'm not saying this concept wouldn't still be very strong, but oh yes, Lauren, that's actually on Blu-ray too. Very rare for a while.
Etoli is really the film for Jennifer Connelly fans. Not a great movie, but she makes a huge impression in it.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. He's right. It's not great, but
I was going to talk about the production designers here real quick. There's actually two of them. One I recognized, one name I did not recognize, but when Proyas finished his preceding film, The Crow, he approached production designer Patrick Tatopoulos to draw concepts for the world in which Dark City takes place. The city was entirely constructed on a set, no practical locations used in the film. Describing the city, Patrick said, "The movie takes place everywhere, and it takes place nowhere. It's a city built of pieces of cities, a corner from one place, another from someplace else. So you don't really know where you are. A piece will look like a street in London, but a portion of the architecture looks like New York. But the bottom of the architecture looks like a European city. You're there, but you don't know where you are. It's like every time you travel, you'll be lost." And the production design included themes of darkness, spirals, and clocks. It created the city architecture to have an organic presence alongside structural elements. And that, like Memento, this is a film that has a very rock solid structure and foundation. And that was very, very much key. What the filmmakers were concerned about the most, because they were saying on the bonus features that studio personnel, they tend to care about the math. It's like, no, filmmakers don't care about the math. They care about the structure and the characters.
Yes. This is another one. I've heard some criticisms that don't really make sense as far as the moisture. It's like, well, why would they come to, why would they have water in this world? And it's like, well, the humans kind of need water. So,
yeah, they do.
I've heard that one a lot when people want to dissect this and criticize it. But I was like, well, they got to keep them alive because, as far as we know, these people still need water.
Oh yeah.
This was at one point a little bit different as far as the strangers go. I know at one point in the story, they were bug-like creatures that burrowed into the brain. It was kind of a little more of a Cronenberg type feel, which I love Cronenberg, but probably stands out a little bit more that they weren't like just insects. I like leaving certain things ambiguous about it.
Would you say they would have been similar to like the slugs in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan that he puts in the ears?
Yeah,
Something more like that?
something that had been done quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Initially, there actually was a much heavier focus on William Hurt's character. There was a subplot with his wife who was in a sort of iron lung type contraption, and a lot of interesting things with his character that didn't make it into the movie. But
is that all in the director's cut?
No. That's just stuff that got lost in the in one of the drafts. But
okay.
The director's cut, like I said, the big thing is the opening narration that kind of spells out more than is really necessary. But unfortunately, again, they told him like you need to dumb this down. It was a $27 million film, which is like nothing now, but at that time that was
back then it was a nice chunk. But then again, New Line had its originally this was supposed to be made at Disney. And they absolutely had no idea what the hell this movie was about. And of course, there was a regime change. Then I think it was talked about going to Fox for a while, but then it ended up at New Line. And this is a credit to Bob Shea, who ran New Line at the time, that they said that New Line was one of the few studios that gave the
less interference.
Freedom.
Yeah. I don't know if there's such a thing as complete freedom, but New Line definitely at this particular point was more hands off. I don't know what this would have looked like if another studio made it. I think again,
exactly. Yeah.
When you look at this late 90s period of like sci-fi, Hollywood sci-fi films, some are fun, but there's a lot of crap around this time. This was a breath of fresh air. I mean, you're looking at stuff around this point. I mean, also with William Hurt, ironically, the Lost in Space movie. Supernova, Virus. There was a lot of stuff that was not. Wing Commander might be the worst one.
Rocket Fart, man.
There was a lot of that. So this really stood out. I think this would stand out now, but back then, this was just like, wow, this is the best thing I've probably seen in a theater, certainly in many years at that point. And I'm glad it did find its audience. It really deserves it.
I mentioned High Noon earlier. One film that I discovered last year, which is very much inspired by High Noon, and even has maybe a few similarities to Dark City, is Outland, the Peter Hyams movie with Sean Connery. I never saw it before. I was like, wow, that was surprisingly very good.
I'm a big fan of that one.
High Noon in space, basically. But yeah, it's good.
Western, something else that always blends well with science fiction. Even going to like some full moon B movies, Oblivion and Backlash, Oblivion 2. I always tend to enjoy that quite a bit. This movie wasn't like a miserable failure in theaters. It kind of just broke even.
27 million. It probably lost a little bit in advertising, but then again, New Line had no idea how to advertise this movie. I mean, it's a classic example where they just had no clue what to do.
Trying to kind of pimp out a film noir to modern audiences at that time.
Yes.
Kind of tough. It's, is this an action movie? Is this a horror movie? I'm sure a lot of people had no idea. Yet at the same time, of course, I was much younger when I saw this, but I don't feel like I recall people disliking it. There was a lot of
Yeah,
head scratching, but I think everybody was intrigued. They at least knew that they weren't walking out of the theater seeing the same old crap. And
right,
I think I
right.
would imagine this movie made a lot of fans on subsequent viewings. I mean, much like
Well,
something like Brazil, which I remember seeing that as a little kid and,
oh yeah.
kind of scratching my head, but growing to love
Well,
it later.
well, one word that came up a billion times during the production process was weird. People said affectionately and non-affectionately. The script is just weird. And even when they put it in front of the Motion Picture Association of America, they gave it an R, despite the fact that Lem Dobbs petitioned for a PG,
Mhm.
and they gave it an R simply because, well, it's just weird. Like, that's not an excuse.
There's a
Thank
few
God the MPA is
bits.
pretty much obsolete now, but
Yeah, more and more so. I mean, you had the bit with the brain splatter on the
yeah,
wall.
there's some
Couple little
violent
things.
images, but nothing like traumatizing.
The original ending, again in an early draft, was actually a court case with Murdoch. He was put on trial for the murders. It was very, very, again, Kafka-esque. So this thing could have looked very different in many different ways. I believe even at one point, although he would seem like one that would be hard to kind of uh, pay, but I'm sure the budget would have increased, was Tom Cruise also at one point
Yeah, I think
considered.
they said like they shut down production for a month because they were trying to get Tom Cruise. I might have
That would
misheard
have,
that, but I was like, wait, what?
yeah,
A month?
that would have totally changed things. Although,
Oh yeah,
again, 12
it probably would have
Monkeys
been
with,
more like not Outland, but what's
yeah.
that? Oblivion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now look, 12 Monkeys with Bruce Willis, that worked
Oh
out
yeah.
pretty well. So uh,
Yeah.
you never know, but I do think this benefited from having a relative unknown.
But speaking of film noir and new line cinema, I mean, 3 years before this, we had David Fincher's Seven, and I'm still shocked how well that did. It made over $300 million, even though that ending was so controversial with the studio.
Mhm.
So controversial.
Yeah,
It still blows my mind. It still completely blows my mind.
the late 90s, mid to late 90s, in particular, there were a lot of great films.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
99 in particular, there was several Stone Cold classics in 1999. I feel like it was an interesting era. I The Mummy, I feel like that was the start of a lot of particular. I mean, I don't dislike The Mummy
Right.
for what it
Right.
is, but kind of felt like the start where the Hollywood blockbuster definitely started to, I don't know, wane.
I think most people would argue Independence Day, believe it or
Yeah,
not.
you could go a little
That
earlier than that.
it ushered in a new dumb era of big dumb blockbusters. And look,
Yeah.
Con Air is fun, but come
Ooh.
on, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. It's
It
insultingly dumb.
it is. I love Con Air. I have more
I
love for
know
Con Air,
it's
but
cool. It's cool. Just
could picture Nicolas Cage as Murdoch. That would have changed it
yeah.
pretty dramatically. Yeah, just all of these shots again.
Oh yeah, I'm mesmerized by every single one of these.
And if you one that I feel like a lot of people maybe listening to this hasn't watched, definitely check out Alphaville, the 1965 film, if you're interested in film noir science fiction. Ghost in the Shell, for that matter. I'm
Oh
not the
yeah.
biggest anime guy, but that is, I would say, an essential science fiction film.
And of course, I mean, my favorite noirs, of course, seem to be from the 40s and 50s, like Night of the Hunter. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Very much a horror
That
film
movie
too. Yeah.
shook me. And then, in the 40s, I love the Bogart films with the Call and everything.
Mhm.
Those are the noirs I grew up with. I mean, You know how to kiss, don't you, Steve? Just put your lips together and blow. And that was 1944.
Oh yeah,
They got away with it.
it's still something that I enjoy seeing. I mean,
Yeah.
you mentioned Humphrey Bogart. I mean, In a Lonely Place, definitely one of my favorite Bogart films.
Oh yes.
Which also inspired some dialogue actually in this one, particularly the love story between Rufus and Jennifer Connelly.
Just to let everybody know, timestamp 35 minutes and 20 seconds. 35 minutes and 20 seconds is where we should be. So, yeah. Oh, man. The cinematographer, he also brought over the cinematographer from The Crow, Darius Wolski, I believe his name is. I probably screwed it up, but yeah.
No, that's right.
Stunning, absolutely stunning work. And now, were you a fan of The Crow when that came out?
Yes, very much so. That was a weird sort of time in a lot of ways. You know, Brandon Lee dying, an actor dying in something that was fake. It still felt like just weird, I was like, well, actors don't die during.
You know what's really weird is that in Bruce Lee's Game of Death, which came out after he died, he actually does die when the hoodlums, when they change fake bullets to real ones.
Yeah.
That's a little too damn. Oh, by the way, this year is the 50th anniversary of Enter the Dragon, and I will be doing a commentary in August after I see it at the theater.
Great.
It will be re-released in theaters. Yeah, the 50th anniversary of Enter the Dragon. Oh my God, what an epic film. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, Dan. Look, David S. Goyer, you know, he did the Blade trilogy. I was not a fan of the Blade movies. It has its audience. They love those films. That's awesome. But were you a fan of the Blade movies?
The first two, the third
the
one.
First two. Yeah, the ones that he did not direct.
Yeah. The third one, there's a very distinct decrease in quality, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Because David S. Goyer, as a lot of people know, he was hired to write Man of Steel by Zack Snyder. And as you know, I admit I'm an old school Christopher Reeve Superman fan, but when I went to see Man of Steel, I honestly felt like my senses were being assaulted. I walked out with a giant migraine, and I've hated that movie ever since. And to be honest, it kind of killed any interest I had in that universe.
Man of Steel is the one with Costner, right? Or is
yes?
Okay, not the spacey one. I'm not a big comic
spacey
book
one. The spacey one is Superman Returns. Yeah,
which is pretty crappy too.
Yeah.
Goyer.
I wonder what Superman Lives with Nicolas Cage and directed by Kevin Smith, if that would have been any better.
Well, you know what? It would have been more interesting. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
It may have been a complete cheese fest. It probably would have been, but I think visually, the Brandon Routh Superman, I mean, which I thought he was a fine Superman. It was just like, this is just kind of boring. Kevin Spacey's hamming it up, but it's just a crappy film. I think Tim Burton would have made something more interesting for sure. At that stage, he still had some juice left in him, I think.
What I was offended about the most was that, you know, at the end when half of Metropolis is in rubble, and you know, Superman flies off after briefly talking to Lawrence Fishburne and another a Daily Planet reporter, and he flies off, and she just says, well, you know, he's kind of hot. He just destroyed half of the city, you dumbass. He did not save one single person in that whole movie. Even Godzilla saved the city with less collateral damage. So I was offended. I said F you to the screen, F you Zack Snyder. You know, that's how much I hated that.
Lauren
anyway,
has
David S. Goyer, enough of that. But But Len Dobbs, they brought on because they wanted to Americanize the dialogue more because, Alex is Australian. And of course, there are Australian actors in this film, making it practically a co-Australian production. It was filmed in Australia, actually. Yeah.
Lauren actually has a really good, obscure double feature.
Oh, Samantha pairs well with Dark City.
Yeah,
nothing like except in their multi-level storytelling and explorations of nihilism. Oh,
yeah, the Zulawski film. I can kind of see that. I never really thought of pairing them together, but
I'm going to take note of these films. I'm going to take note of them, definitely.
Oh yeah, you should check that one out for sure.
Like I said, revisiting Dark City after so many years was, wonderful. Love seeing it again.
Yeah, I wish we had more of this on the big screen and less. I was actually, because I was on Lauren's stream earlier, and we were after we finished, we were talking about superhero films and just how worn down I am by them at this point. Which I don't hate I don't inherently hate superhero films. It's like all we get, it feels, as far as these big high concept films. And I think audiences are underestimated at times. I do feel like something like this could find its audience. Because look, back then, I referenced some of those films earlier. I'm sure most of them were looked at as bigger potential hits, but we're not talking about Wing Commander now. We're not talking about
exactly.
Supernova and Virus. Certainly nobody should have ever talked about.
Was that horrible? I heard nothing but horrible things about that Jamie Lee Curtis movie.
That was unusually bad.
Unusually bad.
I can find some things to like in maybe Supernova. It's a bad movie, but yeah, no, Virus. Yeah, I haven't revisited that one since video.
Well, one of the writers, I forget which one, might have been Alex. He said that in science fiction it could happen, in fantasy it never happens. That's the difference, even though they tend to be spliced together in terms of genre. And a lot of people have compared this to Blade Runner in terms of the impact that it had later. Because I don't think American audiences are just not up to the challenge of cerebral science fiction and having to be pushed into actually studying and understanding what's going on. I mean, they're just so used to having, everything on a plate, I guess you could say.
I like a lot of dumb, fun shit.
Of course, hey, we all do. I want to see Cocaine Bear. I do want to see Cocaine Bear. I do.
With my science fiction, I do kind of appreciate something that leaves me thinking a little bit.
Absolutely.
And this one gives you, just enough to kind of keep thinking about it. Also, what becomes of Murdoch at the end? Is he, maybe going to abuse these new powers?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
A line coming up, I think it's I have Murdoch in mind, which I always really liked.
You were mentioning about the lack of water. I mean, the irony is that their goal was to get to Shell Beach.
Yes.
Yeah. Also for the sun and the beauty of it, of course, but makes you think of that final line in Shawshank Redemption. I hope that the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. Oh yeah.
In mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had an obsession with this movie really over the years.
Wow.
I probably watched this one a lot, actually. And I don't rewatch movies very often, but I do think, hey, Jessica.
Hey, Jessica, lovely to see you. Yeah, keep going, Dan.
Yeah, I do see things each time. And this one, in a way, like I said, it makes me kind of sad that we can't get this more often.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look how Alex just circles the phone booth here, emphasizing the confusion and the, his state of being lost and being like, what the hell is going on? Like, oh yeah, one minute this guy was a hotel manager and now he's a newspaper salesman. Like, the hell? 25 years, no days off for good behavior. But can I just say, look, I mean, of course I've seen the theatrical cut more than the director's cut. I don't mind the narration. I don't think it's a deal breaker. It just, when you understand why it was put in there, then you're like, okay, yeah, obviously, the director's cut is, absolutely, the preference. But, and I was going to ask you real quick. I have not seen the other 3 films that Alex Proyas has directed, which are I, Robot with Will Smith, Knowing with Nicolas Cage, and I think it was Gods of War or something.
Gods of Egypt.
Gods of Egypt, which got a disastrous release due to accusations of whitewashing and everything. But of those 3 films, what do you think of those three films? Are they worth watching?
Well, I will say, like, as far as the whitewashing claims, there are some very white Egyptians in Gods of Egypt.
Oh God.
A little bit of odd casting there. That one, no. I mean, visually it's interesting. That's one thing that he keeps up. If you like, really kind of goofy fantasy stuff, he's been chasing the magic ever since Dark City, to be honest, which I think is his best film.
Absolutely.
I would put it above Crow. Knowing has its moments. I, Robot, it's a Will Smith summer blockbuster, but no,
that's why I passed on it. I just, after Men in Black, I just kind of, I'm not interested in iRobot, despite the Isaac Asimov connection and everything.
There's better
I've always been put off by it for some reason.
There's better science fiction to go for,
totally.
Asimov and just AI stuff in general. It's not awful. It's just, you look every single movie, I'm like, man, I hope he gets back to Dark City level.
Yeah. It's just that after Crow and Dark City, and then you watch something like iRobot, like, oh no, like, I don't know if sold out is the right term to use, but
yeah, well, at a certain point, I mean, the reality is Dark City was not a hit. Obviously, he still was a guy that was recognized for an incredible talent. But next one, you can't be as choosy because Dark City didn't make hundreds of millions of dollars, but but as far as I'm concerned, I mean, 2 all-time classics without a doubt. More than most people get in a career, and he's not done yet. He's not.
I hope he really does get another chance to really shine in a film. I really do.
He deserves it.
A third film to complete like a trifecta. The 3 great ones and the 3 bad ones, or the 3 ones that I've dismissed. Let's put it that way.
I feel like right now more than ever, there's a lot of podcasts now that have gotten very popular talking about simulation theory and all these different things. I feel like if it was marketed correctly, a cerebral, intelligent science fiction film could surprise people at the box office, because there may be casual moviegoers that may not be able to articulate it, but I think a lot of people are kind of starving for something with more substance.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
So I don't know. I feel like it's time for another Dark City that hopefully will have better results. I love this scene. It doesn't really move the plot forward in any specific way, but I just love their dialogue together here by the lake.
I know we shouldn't be reminded, but with the piece of the mind flip, you're into the time slip.
Rocky Horror is a very unique film. I would also say this is Richard O'Brien's best movie, though.
I gotta say this also about Richard O'Brien, because here again, Rufus Sewell had Dangerous Beauty and Dark City, and usually William Hurt had his other movies too, but the other movie that Richard O'Brien did in 1998, I saw 3 times in the theater, and he played the villain yet again, and that was Ever After. And his whole goal in the movie, it's basically an update of Cinderella, but it's my favorite version of Cinderella by far, starring Drew Barrymore. And his villain is basically, he plays this slimy traitor who basically wants to buy Drew Barrymore as a slave and show her his giant schlong.
He always even he was in 2000s Dungeons and Dragons, which not good. Honestly, looks like a classic compared to the new Dungeons and Dragons they have coming out.
Oh, really?
But he's the best thing about it. He makes the best of his scenes. He's really just way over the top, which for that movie, you might as well. Not really a terribly long filmography overall for a guy who's been around as long as he has been, but he's always a scene stealer for sure. And
the weirdest thing about Richard O'Brien's career is that after Rocky Horror, which was not a hit when it first came out, I mean, it became a hit later in midnight showings, but apparently he was in the cast for the Shaggy DA, which was the Disney sequel to the Shaggy Dog. Mm-hmm. And I did a commentary on it last year, and I was thinking, wait a minute, he's not in here. His scene was cut. He's in the credits, but his scene, wherever it was, he was supposed to play a desk sergeant. And look, Richard O'Brien is very familiar. And, that's what I'm saying. When I looked through that movie, I was like, they cut him out. Those sons of bitches.
He's
that's like cutting David Patrick Kelly out of Commando or something.
I'm not a diehard Rocky Horror fan. I do recognize, I mean, it was one hell of a unique film. I can only imagine people that went to see it upon release never saw anything like that before. A lot of great talent came out of that, though.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, God.
Susan Sarandon, Tim Curry, of course, Richard.
Susan Sarandon traipses around almost the entire movie in just bra and panties. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. Kudos to her for braving that.
It was, I know shooting this, Rufus Sewell had said, like, it was very dark on these sets. So, of course, shooting in Sydney, anytime he would open up somebody would open a door and you'd get that flash of light. It was pretty jarring, but probably pretty easy to keep you in character.
Now, see, we're old enough to remember projectors like this, these old time projectors with these slides and everything. You rarely ever see them now, except in like period pieces.
I know of a few people that collect a lot of like old tech that do.
Oh, I believe you. Yeah.
Still have it. Really crazy people who have every home format of for movies, and it's pretty cool. Of course, we get the Scar reveal here. It's a terrible idea to actually go ahead with it, but there's a part of me, maybe not a movie, but I'd be very fascinated almost to see Dark City, a follow-up in this world in graphic novel form. I think you could tell some interesting stories, because once again, what does he do with this ability now? What his relationship with Jennifer Connelly, because as they state in the dialogue, like that wasn't his wife. I mean, why would they necessarily be meant for each other?
Exactly.
At the end.
Richard O'Brien never gets credit for his role in Peter Medak's The Odd Job, but should, because he's great in his brief role. I mean, like I said, almost everything he's in, he's memorable as hell.
Yeah, even if it's not a good project, like I said, Dungeons and Dragons, but you go and you watch that, and that movie comes to life during his scenes in that.
I'd rather watch Mazes and Monsters than Dungeons and Dragons. Tom Hanks just acting nuts. That's enough for me.
Richard O'Brien, lucky to still be with us. I know in an interview a while back he said like he lived pretty hard.
Who?
Richard O'Brien.
Wow.
He lived quite the life. It's fortunate to still be with us and have his health, as far as I know.
Oh yeah, he turns 81 next month. Yeah, born in 1942, and he did a television game show called The Crystal Maze for Channel 4, and played the voice role of Lawrence Fletcher in the Disney Channel animated series Phineas and Ferb, and it's 2 films. And that's right, he was also in Flash Gordon in 1980. I completely forgot about that.
That movie is an acid trip come to life.
Oh, I love it though.
I do too. I have the 4K actually of that one.
Whoever said that looked like it was filmed in a lava lamp, yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's great.
But once again, like you compare that to, I mean, there actually was a Sci-Fi Channel adaptation of Flash Gordon, but you go back and watch that and kind of compare it to similar movies made 20 some years later. Yeah, it's like I remember Flash Gordon, even the stuff you can kind of pick at and make fun of. That movie is very memorable and it feels like a film, an acid trip of a film that you'll never forget.
Ming's daughter, she just wants to take Flash to her secret pleasure moon. It's like, how can you object?
If you're a fan, it's interesting watching them try and take Flash Gordon and make it like a little more
fetishized.
Well, a little bit more grounded in the reboot. Now, Sci-Fi Channel was very successful doing a reboot of Battlestar Galactica, which
yes,
not totally into the way they ended things with that show, but in terms of just quality shows, it was top 2 probably during its run. I mean, just an amazing reimagining. I mean, none of the cheese that you'd expect from a lot of 70s television sci-fi films. It was just dark, gritty, goes places you would not expect. I know Battlestar Galactica may be a tough pitch for some people listening to this, but check out the new Battlestar. It's quite amazing. Edward James Olmos, so many great actors in that one.
That was very much a Poltergeist effect with the stairs there. Yeah. And it did not look like CG. That looked pretty good for the time.
Yeah, it's very light on CG, and like I said, nothing looks cheap. Nothing looks. It all works. I mean, it's just such a beautiful looking film. You could give me these effects now, and it would work a lot better than most modern things that I see.
Nothing is cheap or garish. I mean, that $27 million was very, very well spent. That's for sure. And just to let everybody know, screenwriter Lem Dobbs, who was also interviewed in the bonus material, after Dark City, he wrote the film The Limey with Terrence Stamp, which
great movie.
Has a lot of fans as well. That was directed by Steven Soderbergh, and it's about an English career criminal played by Terrence Stamp who travels to the U.S. to investigate the recent suspicious death of his daughter. And that was a very, very positively reviewed movie, but again, it bombed, unfortunately.
Yeah, another great film from that era. I would also say, if you want to check out The Limey, another one with Ben Kingsley from around the same time, Sexy Beast. Those are
with Ben Kingsley.
Ben Kingsley, yeah. Those are 2 from around the same time. There were some really good British gangster films in the early 2000s, late 90s. It's a good period for that.
Sadly, Lem Dobbs, the last movie he wrote was Gotti, starring John Travolta, which got Razzie nominations. Very sad, but
I never saw it. It didn't look
Hmm.
awful to me, but yeah.
Now, the screenwriter Darius Wolski, I just brought up his resume. Before The Crow, he had only done one other film, which was Peter Medak's Romeo is Bleeding with Gary Oldman. But he also did Crimson Tide, which I'm a personal fan of that movie, being 8 years in the Navy, and was actually a sonar technician in the Navy. I love Crimson Tide. And he also did the production design for cinematography, for The Fan and A Perfect Murder, which was a remake of Dial M for Murder. And then he went on and did all the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So, but he also shot Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street from Tim Burton, Exodus, Gods of Kings, The Martian, Alien Covenant, Sicario, Day of the Soldado. And recently he's been working with Ridley Scott for The Last Duel, House of Gucci, and Napoleon, which is going to be coming out this year.
Who's playing Napoleon? I feel like I'm trying to remember now. I heard something about that project.
That should be later this year, though.
Yeah. Sweeney Todd, in my opinion, is the best latter-day Tim Burton movie.
You know what? I had a soft spot for Dark Shadows, though. It got crapped on. But look, the truth of the matter is the fans of the old show, they loved it. So Tim Burton got something right with Dark Shadows. And I love the women in it. Oh, man. Michelle Pfeiffer, Eva Green, Chloe Grace Moretz, and, of course, HBC. But I love the women in Dark Shadows.
So much. That's that period where it just depends how you feel about Johnny Depp and
exactly
his shtick, which he wasn't quite at his I just don't care anymore phase at that time. But
I'm completely with you. When we did Star 80 commentary with Sam and Chris, when I did it. After we were off the air, we were talking about the whole Johnny Depp thing. And I said, there's probably only 2 movies that I'm willing to watch with Johnny Depp now. Ed Wood and Benny and June. But that's it.
I always so Dark Shadows is one that I never really watched that because it was always like really hard.
Really?
There was just so much of it. I saw the movies, but I always wanted to start from the beginning, and that's like one of the few cult shows that I never really watched. Unfortunately, just couldn't get into it. I always had a soft spot for Ed Wood because I worked with Conrad Brooks, so I kind of had a window into a lot of Ed Wood stories and just Hollywood at the time. Actually, I think the scene where Martin Landau yells at the actor that plays Conrad, and that's pretty funny. One of the better parts of the film. He was really unaware because I accompanied him to a couple conventions, and I told him, I was like, Conrad, you should get some 8x10s of you, because he played the bartender in that film with Johnny, and it's like, you should maybe get a shot of you with him. It might draw more people to your table, because sadly he had done a lot of conventions, so there was a lot of times he would just sit at his table and have nobody to talk to. It was kind of sad.
Oh, wow.
But I don't think he had any real full concept. He's like, oh yeah, isn't he's doing okay with that pirate stuff? And I was like, yeah, Conrad, he's kind of the biggest star in Hollywood at that particular point. And he did finally. I saw him one last time not too long before he died, and I did actually see some 8x10s from that. But this movie, certainly, like, you look at it, it would have become a Johnny Depp movie, or it would have become.
Oh yeah, that's what they said on the bonus features. That's exactly what they said. When you see this movie, you don't see John Murdoch, you'll see Johnny Depp.
Yeah, or Tom Cruise.
I know.
To a lesser extent, Liam Neeson. Although I don't know at this point, if you would consider him well, yeah, actually, because he's not too far off from Star Wars, I believe, at this point. So
I want to welcome Uncle Beer real quick. Love the koala bear
yes.
icon. Sexy Beast was a great flick, and Romeo was another great one. Yep.
Yeah, Sexy Beast. You should all seek that one out. Good one. If you are doing a double, the Limey goes good with it. Ben Kingsley was always an actor. He made great films, but whenever he tried to like dip his toes in like a commercial film, more often than not, it ended up being a complete piece of crap.
The Love Guru.
Yeah, well, yeah, that Sound of Thunder, which a lot of people don't. That was like a big budget dinosaur epic that they were shooting for, and it almost completely bypassed theaters. That was a huge disaster. The Iron Man film he did, I thought, was a piece of crap. Didn't always pick
Shane Black, man. Oh. Well, he made it up with the Nice Guys anyway.
Nice Guys is a great movie.
And Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
This is not the meatiest role for Jennifer Connelly. I mean, she doesn't get as much to do as some of the other actors, but I mean, God, is she striking? Such a beautiful woman.
Oh, unbelievably. One story I got to share about Jennifer Connelly because who is she married to? I'm trying to remember the actor that she.
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany. Yeah, I should know that.
Last I checked, anyways.
Yeah, Paul Bettany. I don't think they had any scenes together, but they did a Beautiful Mind together.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Bettany, actually, when they started talking, Paul Bettany revealed to her that she was his childhood crush, and they ended up getting married a few years later. It's like, wow,
Paul Bettany is a lucky bastard.
He is a lucky bastard. Yeah. What was the last thing Jennifer was in, though? I'm trying to remember.
She was in that Battle Angel movie, Attila Battle Angel.
Oh, she was in Top Gun Maverick. Dude.
Yeah.
I know. I can't believe I forgot that already.
I didn't mind Battle Angel, actually. I thought that was better than its reputation.
This year, it just premiered at Sundance, but Jennifer Connelly's movie this year is a film called Bad Behavior, and it's supposed to be a dark comedy starring Ben Whishaw and directed and written and co-starring Alice Englert. And that's coming out later this year.
Recent in the last 5 or 6 years. She did one called Shelter with Anthony Mackie, I believe. It's about a homeless couple. A little hard to watch. There's some unpleasant sexual stuff in there, but
and guess who directed that? Paul Bettany.
Yeah. I was gonna say one worth checking out if you're a fan. You have to be in the mood for a kind of an upsetting film, but it's very good. Not one to watch if you're depressed, but she has a habit of that with Requiem for a Dream. Not exactly.
Oh yes, absolutely. The director's cut of that is especially hard to watch. I mean, great film, and if you want to show a film to addicts to help them get clean, that's as ideal a movie to probably pick out. It's just a nightmare. Of course, for me, it was Sid and Nancy, because after the third injection of the needle, I'm like, no, I am never putting a needle in my fucking arm ever.
Hey, that stuff that worked. I mean, I grew up in the time of the Scared Straight specials, and I saw that. I've never to this day done hard drugs, so it's it works. Requiem for a Dream is probably one you should show your certainly your teenagers, if not your kids.
And this film was edited by Dov Honig. Still with us. He's 90 years old, born in 1932. He was nominated for The Fugitive, And he also, the other films he's edited are Last of the Mohicans, Diamonds, Operation Thunderbolt, Manhunter, Overboard, Under Siege, and Collateral Damage among his editing work. And it must have been frustrating for him about the director's cut scenes being taken out and everything.
It's not a movie. I mean, it's not a case of it really being butchered. Because again, I fell in love with the theatrical cut long before I saw the director's cut.
But, me too. Absolutely. Yeah.
A little more on the nose. And I don't know, at my age at that time, maybe I kind of needed that opening narration to put it together. I don't know where I was. I feel like I probably could have put it all together. I was a really weird kid watching really weird shit. At that
me
time.
too. I mean, remember when you first saw Liquid Sky?
Oh yeah, on Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome.
Vinegar Syndrome, yeah. Exactly. Just to let everybody know, we're 1 hour and 10 minutes into the theatrical cut of Dark City. Yep. Mm-hmm. Now, this is her alternate name, Anna.
Yeah,
the non-wife of Murdoch. Just the shadows and everything. That's very Nosferatu right there with Richard O'Brien. It's just very, very Nosferatu.
Oh, the German expressionism stuff is all over this movie. Bruce Spence also, again, I know he's kind of like off to playing second fiddle really to Richard O'Brien, but check him out, of course, Mad Max 2. If you are a fantasy fan, which some people tend to throw this in the fantasy genre, I don't think there's a wrong answer to that.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
He was a part of a short-lived series. It went 2 seasons called Legend of the Seeker, which was pretty good. Like it's a precursor to that era where we were kind of getting away from the cheesy fun that was, Hercules or Xena, and kind of like, oh, maybe we can tackle more serious fantasy on TV. Unfortunately, it just wasn't the time for it on cable. It just didn't quite get that massive audience, but a pretty interesting precursor to the Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones kind of took that over. Yeah.
High concept fantasy. Not that it was anywhere near that budget, but it sort of was an interesting segue from, like I said, the fun cheese, which I also enjoy, but most modern fantasy stuff, I'll be honest, I don't like much at all. That's one genre that it's very rare. I'd be like, nah, just want to go back and watch the Harryhausen stuff over what you're giving me.
Here's where Kiefer Sutherland fills in all the blanks for the audience. And when we get to Shell Beach, realize the discovery is, oh my God. It is no longer a beach, or probably never was a beach. I mean, that's the thing. We don't even know, this is probably not Earth. Is it safe to say that?
Yes, it's safe to say that. Again, they don't spell all this out, who these people were, where, when they were. I mean, you want to leave some of that. You know what you need to know. And like I said, I don't think I'd want it explored in a movie. Not that that's in any way going to happen at this point, but a graphic novel, I'd be interested to see.
Yeah, there you go.
This is such a tragic thing. I mean, again, he doesn't, even he doesn't remember where things started, who he was, although he's not, at least not getting brain wiped all the time since he's helping them. But that seems like it would be kind of maybe more of a curse than anything.
Oh, yeah.
Again, his character kind of compared to, a Jewish collaborator with the Nazis was kind of interesting. This whole story really, in many ways, could have focused on any one of them if they wanted to as the lead.
Yeah.
William Hurt, again, was much more, his character was much more featured at one time. Yeah, see, just this dialogue is so brilliant. You don't need more than that. It's what you want to make of it.
And hey, look,
I,
I'm not a fan of David S. Goyer as a writer, but he struck gold with this, along with Alex, who I think Alex conceived the story, and of course they brought Lem Dobbs on to Americanize some things. But they all talk about the script with high affection, working on the script with high affection in the bonus material. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Again, another film. It was 97, 98, depending when you're counting it. Blu-ray or the TV premiere. But there was another film right around the same time called Cube that really blew my mind, and I mention that right now specifically because that did get 2 sequels, and Cube made that mistake. The mystique was gone. Once they started over explaining it, like I could easily see if this were a hit, we would have gone to The Strangers, maybe Home Planet. We would have figured out like, okay, well, why are they dying? Why are they? And then all of this this mystery would just be gone.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you could tell that story in graphic novel form, but I think it's a blessing in a way that this didn't get the sequels, because as much as I love Cube, those, and they're not, the worst made sequels, but it takes away all of that, like, oh my God, what is this? Who's doing this? There's some questions you don't want to answer in science fiction.
I love the concept of Cube. I didn't like any of the characters. They rubbed me the wrong way, and I was turned off by them. By the last scene, I do remember the last scene. I was like, "That's it." I was disappointed with it. I mean, here again, the premise, genius. I don't think it was executed particularly, maybe audience friendly, I think that would be the right term for it. But I could see a remake working for that if you get the right writers on board.
It has some over the top acting in Cube, but it kind of fits its sort of bizarre tone. But that was another one and that didn't get any kind of a significant theatrical release to speak of.
I think it was a Canadian production that sort of like splurged its way onto DVD in the States.
Some people consider it a Sci-Fi Channel original, which it did air on there at one point. But I mean, if you're considering that, it's by far the greatest Sci-Fi Channel original ever made.
One of my first sci-fi experiences, I'll never forget this, is when my father rented a movie on VHS back in 1989 called Moontrap with Walter Campbell Koenig, and Walter Koenig, who plays Chekhov in Star Trek. And I remember watching this movie just thinking, oh my God, these robots are freaking me out. As low budget production as it was pretty impressive visually for that kind of low budget independent film.
So this wasn't heavily advertised,
right?
But there is a sequel of sorts called Moontrap Target Earth from 2017 with Sarah Butler.
It was atrocious.
Yeah,
I hated it.
Yeah, no, it's not good. But
it's not good, and it didn't make any sense.
No, it didn't.
If they brought Bruce Campbell back, maybe they could have turned it into something more interesting. But oh God,
yeah, it wasn't really advertised so much as a sequel, which I'm kind of surprised with that one that they didn't just add the the end of it, because I think I remember picking it up and I just assumed like, oh, same name, it's no connection.
Oh, and I'll tell you, the Blu-ray of Moontrap is embarrassing because, first of all, it got one of the worst reviews on Blu-ray.com. And when I eventually looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, they were right. The interviews do look like they were conducted in the back of a gas station. Oh God, that was disgusting. That was just disgusting. Well, look, I think the grandfather of all science fiction films is, of course, Metropolis, which, I saw in theater when they found the longest version available, remastered. It was just stunning. But I have to admit, I do like the Giorgio Moroder 90-minute rock music video version, which I know people get on that. But, hey, Moroder, he worked with what he had. And, I think that he accomplished something significant with that. I could see average people who don't care for science fiction or silent films embracing that version of Metropolis over the traditional 2-hour silent hour film.
It's a different way to experience it. I mean, of course, I think
Exactly.
you should check out both. I own 2 copies of that on Blu-ray, though. So,
Oh, yeah.
It's a different way to experience it. I don't have any issues with that, but certainly, I mean, Metropolis. I don't think it's visible here, but I do have a Metropolis bobblehead in the library.
Slightly unrelated, but in the same year of 1927, when Metropolis came out, there was this Napoleon movie that came out by Abel Gance. And it's very rarely shown. I managed to see it in Oakland, California. They had 4 screenings of it over the course of a weekend. 3 breaks, including a dinner break, because the movie is 5.5 hours long. So just imagine watching a 5.5 hour silent movie about Napoleon, and then near the end, the screen splits into 3 different screens. That was one of the greatest theatrical experiences of my entire life.
Oh, it sounds interesting.
Never forget that. Sure, the tickets were $100, but it's still no joke. I had to go see that.
Yeah. Well, you remember the experience. That's the important part.
That's all that matters. Yep, that's all that matters. I'm sure Dark City would have been a great theatrical experience had I had the chance to see it.
It was.
Yeah.
I try, and I mean, not so much back then, but I always try, and as much as I can, if I can start a conversation, get a feel for the initial reaction, because you never know what you might be seeing at the theater is
Absolutely. Yeah.
Might be the next Dark City that people are talking about 25 years later. Over the years, it can skew certain movies too, because there are some films that I'll have a really good theatrical experience and then like watch again later and like, what did you see?
Yeah.
Can be work a little bit more with an audience than it really is.
He's got the powers that they've all been dreading that he would use. thanks to Kiefer Sutherland and his little father magic switcheroo thing, or I guess.
And maybe not the most I'd say it's a pretty rousing finale.
It is, yeah.
It's not that complex martial arts that you get in the Matrix, which I do enjoy the first Matrix quite a bit, but I think it works really well.
Yeah,
I know
works beautifully too.
One criticism I hear about this movie a lot is that they never maybe truly felt that he was in danger from the strangers, which I don't necessarily agree with that, but
yeah, I still felt danger for him in certain scenes. But what's sad is that, I mean, of course, I was in Navy boot camp when Dark City came out. When The Matrix came out, I wasn't even in the U.S. I was over in Japan. I was on a ship in the Pacific Ocean. So I didn't get to see The Matrix until like 6-8 months after it was hyped to death. And I finally watched it. I was like, yeah, it's okay. I don't know. It just didn't really capture my imagination. I mean, if I watched it again, I'm sure I would find a lot more to appreciate about it. But
another example of like, didn't really need the sequels.
They didn't need the sequels. I mean,
certainly didn't need the last one. That was awful. But
to this day, look, I love my audience. I have one recommendation for you. I still think the Wachowskis' best film is Bound. From 1996 with Joey Pants, Jennifer Tilly, and Gina Gershon. And I will never, ever forget watching Bound for the first time, even before The Matrix. And that is a film noir gem, if there ever was one. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the steamy scenes. It kind of has this reputation as just being a TNA flick.
Yeah,
But
unfortunately, yeah.
but it is a legitimately awesome movie.
I mean, let's put it this way: when Gina Gershon starts fingering Jennifer Tilly acts the fuck out of that scene. I mean, you actually do believe that she's about to have on the verge of having an orgasm. Yeah.
Gina made some
But this is a
questionable.
spectacular enough finish. I mean, I'm sure without.
Oh, I think it's an amazing finish.
Yeah, yeah.
Again,
It wraps up everything very nicely. I mean, I don't think anybody. I mean, did you know anybody that was left this movie confused or just
yeah, definitely. I think it was, and even to this day, once in a while, Men is a good example. I think a lot of things with that one on first viewing, of course, seeing it with the crowded audience, sometimes there were certain things that went over my head. I still don't love that movie like a lot of people do. I love elements of it,
yeah.
but it happens sometimes. Even for a seasoned moviegoer, certain things just don't quite hit you the same way it might hit other people. And yeah, I think this is a great finale here.
Yeah, sorry, Matrix fans. I would take Dark City over Matrix any day of the week.
I would agree.
I mean, I appreciate the brevity of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's explores some similar themes, but it's a very different movie.
Yes. Yeah.
One that I always mention when Matrix or Dark City or 13th Floor, for that matter, also from that same era, existence, is the German film World on a Wire, which the Criterion put out a Blu-ray of that years ago. It was actually a TV movie, but if you're interested in some of the themes in those movies, I do recommend you check out World on a Wire from Werner Fassbinder. It's a long one too, though, so it's it may depend how much you're into that stuff. But
you know what movie I did a commentary on last year that's directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder?
Mm-hmm. Which is that?
Oh, that was The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant.
Okay.
I loved it. I fell in love with that movie from the very first shot.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely wants to make me see other Fassbinder movies now.
Yeah, check out World on a Wire. I don't know if it'll play the same way, but like I said, it's a science fiction film that doesn't get talked about a lot. It's on a lot of like most underrated lists.
It came out in 1973. I could probably do it's 200 minutes. I don't know if I could do a commentary for it, but
be a long one. Yeah, be a long stream.
Unless you want to do it together.
Might do that at some point. That sounds fun.
See, I always look at the running times when it comes to these movies and choosing commentaries, because I think, okay, can I talk about Once Upon a Time in America for 4 hours?
You kind of get into that losing your voice
exactly
mode by the end of that one. But yeah, absolutely visually spectacular here. It doesn't feel like something that was made when it was, and
exactly, yeah, it doesn't really date, late 90s. If anything, it dates the 40s more.
Yeah. I really hope, I don't know if somebody will maybe listen to this or one of the other podcasts out there on Dark City, but I would love to see somebody take a shot at it as a graphic novel, because I think there's something really interesting here that would work more in that medium than film for a sequel. If you did attempt a film, I don't know, I think it would be so hard for it not to go the way of Cube.
Yeah, I mean, they're remaking The Crow, and I think that's bad enough. I mean, I wish they would have left Crow and Dark City alone.
Crow has had one hell of a troubled It's I know Jason Momoa, Bradley Cooper was attached. It is the Loki actor Tom Hiddleston was
Tom
attached to it.
Hiddleston. Yeah, I heard about that too.
Bill Skarsgård. I'm kind of curious. I don't know. None of the sequels were fantastic. There were some good soundtracks there, though. But
I just remember when City of Angels came out. I refused to see it. I thought this is an insult to Brandon Lee's memory. I couldn't help but think that. I mean, I'm sure there are some cool, creative, talented people that worked on it, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Mia Kirshner is pretty good in it. It's not a good film. The last one they did, Crow Wicked Prayer with Edward Furlong, is awful. That one
with Kirsten Dunst. Is she also in that?
No, she was in Salvation, which is the third one with Eric Mabius. That one's fine.
That was fine. The best of the Crow sequels, you think?
Yeah, which isn't saying a lot. But
yeah, exactly.
Now that's a totally different film than what it started out as, because Rob Zombie was attached to direct what eventually became Crow Salvation. And if memory serves me, the script that he was working off of was a post-apocalyptic version of The Crow, and I believe at least at one point it was a female crow, which was another recurring theme for a while. It was being shopped around that was going to be the new Hook. It would be a female crow. Lots of different stuff that never came to be with The Crow.
And just really... let everyone... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying this ending dialogue.
Yes,
here is interesting. Like
very Blade Runner-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Very Blade Runner-ish. Yeah.
People pointed out the Roy Batty comparisons to a degree with Richard O'Brien there. Little bit, kind of
he practically fries when the sun gets shown on him. All the strangers are gone, and now, for the first time in God knows how long, we will have natural sunlight enter the city.
Gone, or maybe in the shadow. I mean, depending.
Yeah, I mean, they could probably update this with a sequel or a reboot in some way, but
it's a lot of questions. It would depend on
who's involved, and it would depend on the script.
Yeah, I mean, how would he, almost effectively being a god at this point,
exactly. Oh, by the way, one thing about Rufus I need to mention real quick is when they asked him about the opening narration they were forced to do for the theatrical version, and asked about the audiences and everything, he just said, "Oh, fuck him." Like, just made me love Rufus even more.
He, again, not among the best films he's done, but he also starred in a remake of the AIP film She Creature, which is actually a case where, I'll be honest, the remake is better. Very different. It's about a killer mermaid, but that was that string
Killer Mermaid? Oh, that's original.
Well, that was that unusual series of remakes they did of the AIP stuff. Like Larry Clark did Teenage Caveman,
right?
Which really, it was a mixture of like just direct to video crap, and then She Creature was probably the best of the bunch. It's a decent little creature. Carla Gugino is in it. It's a decent little creature.
He did some other decent films like The Illusionist and The Holiday, and but then of course he also made like The Tourist and Hercules. Yeah,
he's a character actor. He pops up in all sorts of different stuff, but may not be a household name. But
he was in Old last year, directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
That's a piece of crap.
I heard. Don't bother with Old.
I think there's a few people in the community, and I do not understand how, but they do like it. But it's Old is insanely bad.
Oh, and Fade Out.
Yes. Huh.
That was Dark City, yeah, directed by Alex Proyas. And see, screenplay by Alex Proyas and Lem Dobbs and David S. Goyer, story by Proyas. Yeah. Now it's going to take about 30 seconds till we get to the actual credit, but you'll notice when the credits start to move up that there is a dedication to Dennis Potter, and I want to
Mhm.
talk about him real quick. Dennis Potter, he was born in 1935, passed away in 1994 at the age of 59. He was a dramatist, screenwriter, and journalist, best known for the BBC television serials Pennies from Heaven and The Singing Detective, and the BBC television plays Blue Remembered Hills and Brimstone and Treacle. And his television dramas mixed fantasy and reality, the personal and the social, and the often used themes and images from popular culture. He is widely regarded as one of the most influential and innovative dramatists to have ever worked in British television. Now, very, very sadly, he died a horrible, horrible death. Basically, on March 15th, 1994, 3 months before his death, while his health was deteriorating, Potter gave an interview. Oh, is that? Uh, he gave an interview to Melvin Bragg, later broadcast on April 5th, Channel 4. He had broken most of his ties with the BBC as a result of his disenchantment with the directors general, and he was using morphine and champagne cocktail as pain relief, but he was also chain smoking at the time. And basically, the condition that he was diagnosed with was oh man, I had it right here. Pancreatic cancer, yeah. And the last months of his life, he was in a lot of pain, and he was also taking care of his wife, who had breast cancer at the time, and she died in late May, and then Dennis Potter followed 9 days later on June 7th, 1994. But for 3 long months, he was in practically constant pain and taking care of his deteriorating wife at the same time. That is one of the saddest endings. Oh my God, that absolutely terrible, absolutely terrible. But this film is dedicated to his memory. So yeah, that's Dennis Potter there.
Yeah, this is certainly one. I think anybody that worked on it, I hope they're all aware of what an amazing film it is and what a great legacy.
Oh yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have come out for the Blu-ray bonus features, even though that was way back in 2008. But seriously, we need a 4K of this. We need to have a 4K, which corrects a lot of the Blu-ray DVD navigation issues, so you can access everything much more easier.
You get a lot of, I mean, as far as expensive editions of 4Ks, I think Dark City would warrant it. I would not regret dropping that, because I think this movie has a lot of rewatchability to
but
it.
It's I think it's owned by Warner Brothers, who of course also owns Dangerous Beauty. So who knows? Who knows? But they already have all the bonus features. All they got to do is upgrade and repackage. So I don't know.
Yeah, some new docs too, because I mean it has been a very long time since the special features were recorded for this. So
that's very true.
I'd like to see, some fresh. My favorite, probably more than anything, even more than cast and crew stuff now, is those sort of film scholar commentaries and stuff like that. I mean, I could see like Arrow doing an amazing job.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Arrow would be ideal.
Because it's there's just a lot to break down. You could do a doc on some of the German expressionist films that inspired it. I mean, hell, I could do a whole thing on just similar films that we've name dropped tonight. So hopefully all of you guys have some other films that you can check out.
Well,
World on the Wire is one you probably haven't seen. So
before we close out the commentary, I want to let everybody know that my next two commentaries next weekend Will be two 50th anniversary commentaries. One for, excuse me, Turkish Delight, directed by Paul Verhoeven and starring Rutger Hauer, which I've been reading the book for, and like, holy shit. Now I know why they call it a cross between Love Story and Last Tango in Paris.
Read Rutger, I can't think of the exact name, but Rutger Hauer's autobiography has some good stories from.
Really, I should because I actually really like that film now, and I wasn't prepared for to do it on Friday night because I was sick, unfortunately. So, but
it's probably one you can get used for relatively cheap.
Okay,
unless it's like way out of print, but I believe that one you can get a used paperback for not too terrible. It's got some stories. Rutger Hauer made a lot of interesting movies, even a lot of interesting B movies, stuff like
Blind Fury.
Blind Fury, Blood of Heroes is one.
Oh wow, A Flesh and Blood, also directed by Paul Verhoeven.
That's an amazing film. Bleeders, though, even getting into some of the less regarded stuff. His is a fascinating filmography to go down. Crossworlds is a decent little sci-fi film.
So yeah, that'll be next Saturday night, Turkish Delight, and then next Sunday I will be doing Save the Tiger, starring Jack Lemmon, which won him the Academy Award for Best Actor in 1973. And got a lot to say about that one too. I have the book on standby and everything. So yeah, a couple of commentaries, a couple of 50th anniversary commentaries based on well-received books at the time. So we will examine those. So let me thank everybody in the chat real quick for coming out. Uncle Beer, visited by Voices, Lauren. Check out his new book, by the way, Divide by Zero. Jessica, Cliff Booth.
Sure.
And thank you all for coming out tonight. And thank you so much, Dan, for jumping on board tonight. I mean, this was really, really wonderful. Really wonderful commentary to do for Dark City. So
yeah, good times, great movie too.
Good times, great movie. So yeah, I will see you all next week for Turkish Delight and Save the Tiger. As Piz would always say on Region Free, peace.